is good. Thank you. So, yeah, it's broadcasting now. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare
Вот эту
Hare.
ближе или дальше, вот это, она двигается, вот это белое.
Wow. You know, that camera also has ways of, I don't know if we can choose because it's in Windstream, but normally you can choose, see that?
It's extra light.
Is that light? Does that look
extra
like
light.
light? It's too late?
Outside
Not
button.
doing anything.
Not
Maybe
working.
it's too
Maybe
late.
it's for other camera, for back.
Maybe. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura. This is a Vedic guitar, so it's okay. It's bona fide. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. So, we're gathered here today to get inspired. And what I like to do is review a little bit of what we talked about yesterday, and then if you have any questions, you can clarify anything that's not clear, and then we can begin talking about something new. Can you hear? Can you hear me now? A competition with the fans. I have so many fans in here. And all my fans are clapping. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. And when you hear the recording, you get to hear it in the background. But without it, you all sweat to death. So what to do? It's too hot, right? Yeah. Okay. So, what did we discuss yesterday? Anything significant? Meaningful? Important?
We have to have a goal that inspires us.
Yes. What did you say? Say that again.
We have to have a goal that inspires us.
Oh yeah, have a goal that inspires us.
If not, we're dead.
And then we have a movement of dead, surrendered devotees. Very surrendered and very dead.
If it's the goal according to our nature, then we'll be inspired and it will seem like there's no obstacles.
Yes. If the goal is according to your nature, you won't even notice obstacles. And if it's not according to your nature, you notice obstacles that aren't even there. Or things will become obstacles that aren't really obstacles. Then what about the idea of surrender? You should surrender. Don't do what you want to do, just surrender. How do we understand that? Or don't we?
To the level that we're actually capable of surrendering, rather than we might understand the ideal of surrender, but if it's not according to where we're at, then it can create problems.
Yes, and additionally, you have a nature. So until you're transcendental, you can't give up that nature, so you surrender that nature in service. Because usually it's with that nature you do the best service. And if you try to surrender that nature, you tend to go back to it. There's a funny story. There's a devotee, a godbrother of mine, and he was part of a troupe called Vaikuntha Players, and they performed for Prabhupada. And Prabhupada really liked dramas. In fact, Prabhupada himself said that he had performed dramas in his earlier days. And he really liked the dramas, and once he said the dramas are better than the books. There's so much emotion there and so forth. So, this Vaikuntha Players was a group of actors, and they would travel the world. And Prabhupada encouraged that. I don't know if he funded it, but he definitely encouraged it. And so later on, after Prabhupada left, that team disbanded. And one day, I was walking in a park, and there was an amphitheater in the park, and I couldn't really see because there was a big fence covered by ivy, but I could hear. And they were performing Shakespeare. And I could hear one of the actors speaking with a very deep voice, reciting Shakespeare. And lo and behold, was that devotee from the Vaikuntha Players, performing Shakespeare in the park. So you may think, why was he performing Shakespeare? He should be performing some devotional drama. But there was no drama group at that point, at the temple he was in. So because his nature was to act, he was going to act no matter what. So he acted in Shakespeare. So like Krishna told Arjuna, you have your nature, you're gonna act anyway. So you can't give it up. So sometimes we see that people have a nature that it's so strong and obvious that if they can't find an outlet for it in Krishna consciousness, they'll do it anyway. Because they have to, because that's their nature. Does that make sense? Yes? Does that make rubles, paisa, sense in Australia, right? Sense? No?
Yeah. Tiene sentido. Tiene sentido.
Tiene sentido. Does it make sense? No, sense like money.
Makes sense.
Tiene pesos. Tiene dinero. Does it make money? In English, sense is money. Dollars and cents. Anyway,
Okay.
it's a play on words. Okay. So what else do we learn?
It's a way of purification and service and surrender to the Guru, but it's not our nature. So it's just a way to purify ourselves, and then, like mercy to the Guru, we discuss with him, we can get our own service.
Yeah. So like the spiritual master wants to see a disciple, his willingness to surrender. At the same time, the spiritual master also wants to engage according to nature. Just like in the Gurukul, you see, okay, this is a really good point. When Maharaj was talking about, in class this morning, he was talking about how if you want good family life, you have to train good men. So the Gurukul actually makes good families. The Gurukul makes good everything. Right? So in a Gurukul, they don't educate everyone their whole life in the same way. Because everybody's different. Right? Our educational system educates everyone the same. The man and the woman. No matter what your talents and skills are, you get educated in the same way. And so, in the Gurukul, they notice or they understand through astrology and nature, they understand the inclination of the student, and they begin to, at a certain point, will educate the student according to that inclination. Right? Now still, as a brahmachari, he's subservient. He does anything the Guru wants. But at the same time, the Guru is educating him according to his nature. Because brahmachari life is a preparation for what they're going to do. And it would be foolish to educate him as a kshatriya if he's a brahmin. Wouldn't it? And the Guru doesn't say, well, you should just surrender and become a kshatriya. The Guru says, no, you're a brahmin, so you'll be educated as a brahmin. That's the idea. And our parents say, you should become a doctor. Or a lawyer or an engineer. Nothing about nature. And my personal experience is amongst Hindus, that's even stronger. And it's so ironic because the Bhagavad Gita doesn't teach that. And that's supposed to be their scripture, right? Bhagavad Gita is the scripture of the Indians. And in modern culture, Indian families tend to want their children to get educated in a very specific way. In fact, it's so common in India that they had to make a movie about it. It became such a big problem. Is it true that kids were committing suicide because they were being forced into particular occupations which were so much against their nature that they had dreams to be something and their parents wanted them to be engineers? And it's so funny, I was just in Bangalore, right? So we're driving through Bangalore. Actually, I was driving about 4 hours a day in Bangalore. So, they'd say, there's a new college, there's a new college, there's a new college. There were only technological colleges. That's all there were. You go in America, technology is a department in a college. There may be some technological schools, but that's more the exception. Mostly it's a college that has a department of technology, and there are other departments. So philosophy, psychology, religion, medicine, law, art, right? That's a normal. In India, it's like, there's a college, what do they teach? Technology. There's a college, what do they teach? Technology. There's a college, this Institute of Technology, and then they have the College of Management. What does that do? That manages the technologists. That teaches you how to manage the technology.
Technology mean engineering?
Computer engineering. I think more computers, right?
It's mostly engineering. All the branches, different branches of doing engineering.
And MBA also. MBA. MBA engineering. Yeah. So, so it became such a problem that they made a movie in India about it. And in the movie, you're all wondering how I saw the movie. That's another story. I'll tell you how I saw the movie, just so I can keep my reputation clean. But first I'll tell you about the movie. Most movies I see are on airplanes, watching the movie next to me, trying to figure out what it is because I'm not listening. But in the movie, one person killed himself and one person tried to kill himself because of the pressure that the family put on them and the competition within the school to do well. And the point of the movie was that there were so many people in the school that were not engineers but being forced by their families to do it. And it's kind of becoming, I guess it was an epidemic, or it has become an epidemic. Otherwise, why would they make a movie? It was it was a comedy, but it was social. Right? True?
Few years ago, maybe like 7-8 years ago, it was a very big thing. But now after that, because so many people, so many students committed suicide, they started creating awareness about it, that let people do what they want.
So it's less. So yeah. Okay. So would you like to hear how I saw the movie? Or is that irrelevant? Or you have doubts in my qualification that I watched it? Okay. It's a funny story. It's instructive. You'll learn something about Maya. When my daughter was, I don't know, 7 or 8, we got stuck in Mumbai. We came from Vrindavan. We got stuck in Delhi. We came from Vrindavan to Delhi to get a train to go to Mayapur. And tourists, usually they get on a tourist quota, which means you go in the day before and you can get a ticket the next day. This was December and there was no tourist quota. They had already given all the tickets out. So now we're sitting in Delhi with nothing to do. And we don't know when we're going to get a ticket. So my young daughter is bored. So my wife said, you want to go to a movie? And she's bored out of her head. She said, okay, we'll go to a movie. And so we walked down the street to the movie theater, and they said, all the tickets are sold. I said, okay. Then all of a sudden they said, oh, we have 4 tickets. And we said, okay, we'll take 2, my wife and my daughter. Because as you know, I'm a pure devotee and I don't go to movies. So the man said, you have to buy 4 tickets. We won't sell you 2. And if you ask me why, my only answer is because it's India. There is no answer. There's no reason. It doesn't make any sense. There was a line of people who wanted to get in, but we had to buy 4 tickets. Okay? So 4 tickets means, okay, I'll go in with you. I'll be a good father. I'll go in and stay for 10 minutes. Because as you know, I'm a pure devotee. I don't watch movies. But as a good father, I will, sacrifice 10 minutes of my valuable time to watch a movie. So I called up the devotees we're staying with, and I told him the situation, and I said, well, we had to buy 4 tickets, so I'm going to go in just to spend time with my family, and then I'll come out in 10 minutes. And he said, do not underestimate the power of Maya. He said, you're not coming out in 10 minutes. Don't give me that 10 minutes. Don't underestimate the power of Maya. And I was thinking, I'm coming out in 10 minutes. So this was, so when was it? This was like 8 years ago. And I lived in India in the late 90s. And my recollection of movie theaters is only what I've seen outside, which looked like pretty dumpy, worn down places. When I walked in this theater, it was actually nicer than a theater in America. I was like, wow. And it had a beautiful sound system. And my impression of Indian movies was they were very amateurish, at least by my standard. The music was horrible. The acting was worse than the music. The cinematography was worse than the acting and the music. And it appealed to kind of like a village mentality and very bored city people who had no better entertainment than lousy movies. That's the Western perspective, because everything was substandard by Western perspective. And then I walked into this movie theater and the movie started, and it's like amazing soundtrack, amazing sound system, amazing cinematography, and I was like shocked. So I started watching it. And the interesting thing is, the movie was in Hindi. We didn't even understand it. But it was so good that my friend was right, don't underestimate the power of Maya. And I stayed for the whole movie. So, the moral of the story is, if you take a little bit of Maya, you'll want to eat more. Right? Anyway, but it was kind of a social commentary, that movie, on the very topic we're talking about. So traditional education, you're educated by your nature. And you never are going to run into this problem of what's wrong with me, how come I don't have the brain of an engineer? There must be something wrong with me. I'm not an MBA, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an engineer. There must be something wrong with me. You don't have that problem because you're educated from the beginning according to your nature. You are qualified to be a mechanic. That's what you're supposed to do. You're going to work on engines your whole life. And you will say, I love to work on engines. I could work on an engine all day. Right? There are people that love to work on engines. Did you know that? All the ladies are thinking, how could you love to work on an engine? There are people that love to do that. They love to take things apart. You have little boys, when they're young, they take things apart and then they put them back together because they just want to see how things work. Yes? We had a devotee, he took apart a van. He just sawed the van and made it bigger. Basically, he destroyed it. But anyway, you understand the principle, right? So, in a varnashram system, then you will be trained according to your nature. And you won't be mental that there's something wrong with you. You'll just be happy. Your nature is to make pots, and that's what you're going to do your whole life. You're going to make pots. And you're going to be happy making pots. That's it. Right? And you're going to run this whole village, because that's your nature. And you're going to be a teacher, and you're going to be a doctor, and you'll be an astrologer, and you'll take care of the cows, and everything's good. And people don't go to psychologists in those situations, laying on the couch complaining, I'm only a cowherd boy, what's wrong with me? Why am I not an engineer? You don't have that. right? Because that's what you're trying to do. And because it's your nature, you like doing it and you're happy, right? So now I have to tell you a story. I don't know if I told you this story before, but this story is very significant. So please pay attention. There was one of my godbrothers who did a master's and went on, he did a PhD. Anyway, when you do this kind of postgraduate work, you have someone who helps you who's called a, what do they call? Supervisor. They can supervise you. And so this devotee was a spiritual master, so he invited his supervisor to the Vyasa Puja. And he actually sat next to him. And they kind of had a little discussion going back and forth, and then he would talk about, this is Tamakar Maharaj, he would talk about Tamakar Maharaj, and this Tamakar Maharaj would talk about the supervisor. And I think I mentioned this story before, but I noticed that this supervisor, being an academic by nature, really loved academia. You could see it in just his demeanor, in the discussions he was having with Tamakar Maharaj, the way he spoke, the way he thought. You could see he was from head to toe an academic. And academics love information. And they love to discuss and critique and theorize and speculate. They just love it. They love to read books and speculate. That's academia. We have any academics here? Anybody been through higher education?
My mother. I know it.
You know what I'm talking about, yeah. They just love information. They can just read and study and discuss different points of view, come to no conclusion, just discussion and expanding information. Yes, you understand? So I could see this man was rightly situated. This was his nature, to be an academic, and you could see he was really happy. You ever meet somebody, you kind of tell they're happy. You could just see materially he was quite happy. Although we say there's no material happiness, we mean there's no eternal permanent happiness. But one of the things that was very evident to me from this is that really the highest material happiness aside from family life is being situated in your occupation that you like, because you do it every day. And if you're inspired by it, at least on the material level, you're happy. And you know what it's like when you do something and you're not happy? It's hell, isn't it? I mean, that's another definition of hell. Working a job you hate. How many of you ever worked a job you hate? Was it hell? Yeah, right? How many of you ever worked a job you like? Was it heaven? Yeah. So, I mean, were you happy? It's so. It's you can be happy, so-called, materially, if you're in your right varna and ashram. So now, at this Vyasa Puja ceremony, there were many devotees who, by varna, were in their wrong varna, but they were doing that because they had to pay the bills. You know about paying bills? How many of you know about paying bills? When there's no money in the bank, what do you do?
Credit card. Credit card.
And when you spend your credit card and it's full, then what do? You don't know.
What?
You do something to get some money in the bank, right? Wash cars, clean dishes. You do something. You got to do something, right? So at this Vyasa Puja, there are many devotees in the audience who were doing something to pay their bills, but that something they were doing was not their nature. And I knew them. And I knew what they were doing. And so here I was sitting at this Vyasa Puja thinking, this is a really interesting situation. Because what these devotees are doing in their varna is actually making them very unhappy. So although spiritually they're happier than this supervisor, but materially, actually he's happier. Does that make sense? Their material duty, what they were doing, it was so disconnected from their nature that it was just causing them unhappiness, frustration, and misery. So they go to the morning program, dance ecstatically, everything's good, and then they go into their occupation, which has nothing to do with their varna, and just kind of struggle through that. So it was quite a contrast, because I was looking at this man and looking at the devotees and saying, he's happier than you are, most of the time, at least materially. Yes?
You discussed this point a few times ago also, many times ago also. So my question is, probably sometimes the dharma you want to follow, or the path you want to follow might not fetch you the enough capacity to pay the bills. And then in that case, what should be done?
Marry a rich woman. Don't get married.
Anyway, they believe you marry or don't marry, you have to pay the bills.
Well, if you're single, you can make enough money doing what you like. But the other, you can, but you have to figure out how. You have to have that faith, and you keep meditating and working on it, and you have to be really good at it. So when you're really good at it, you can make money because people will want you.
But in most cases, people won't be too good at what they want to do.
No,
They
usually.
want to do as a service, but
Well, you're talking about occupation now, not service, right?
being devotee isn't your dharma connected with your Krishna consciousness.
Say that again.
Like being devotee, being hearing so much from Prabhupada and other devotees and being connected to Krishna consciousness, isn't your dharma is defined by, is like your dharma is most probably something you want to do and you want to practice Krishna consciousness nicely. Someone may be interested.
That's your sadhana, but you're talking about making money. So that means that's your occupation. So now you find your occupation in terms of your nature. Within Krishna consciousness, yes, you want to.
But like you said, you have to be situated in dharma. So dharma of the soul or dharma of the body? I mean, this is confusing because dharma means
Dharma of the body. Because that's what you're doing all day. Whether it's in Krishna consciousness, directly as service, or it's your occupation. If you do something according to your nature, well, I mean, ideally, you should do everything for Krishna, but you mentioned money. So I'm talking occupation, because that's how you make money.
But because you said that devotees are not situated, you took that example that devotees are not in the right varna because they are trying to pay the bills by doing something which is just out of their dharma. So if they are situated in their dharma, someone may like to speak about Krishna consciousness, may like to preach, but then he is not able to preach so effectively or so nicely because he is also engaged giving 8 hours or 10 hours of his daily life outside somewhere else to pay the bills. So that is like.
So he should he should become a teacher then. He either has to figure out how to make money teaching Krishna consciousness, or then he should teach, because he'll be happier than painting houses. Right? And maybe he'll make less money teaching than he would painting houses, but he'll probably be better off. You know, if you go anywhere in the world, when all the construction workers get off work, what do? Yeah, they all get drunk, right? Because the job is so, it's just the nature of the job. Well, of course, there's Shudra also, but when you're engaged in an occupation that's frustrating you, where do you get your happiness? From beer and whatever, right? So that's part of the problem. A man, now hear from me how you become perfect doing your work. So Krishna's always talking about working according to your nature. One of our godbrothers, he teaches Bhagavad Gita in the university. Been doing it for 20 years. He once said, I probably taught Bhagavad Gita to more people than anybody. Because he, for 20 years he has, 3-4 classes a year teaching Bhagavad Gita to me. So, he's an academic, and he's happy. Someone who's a musician, they make an album, they perform, they do kirtan. They spread Krishna consciousness that way. If they're smart, they could do that full time, make money. Then they're happy. Right? So, general idea. Specific details, how to do it, that's another thing. But my point, one of the points I wanted to make is that a lot of us don't even think about that. We just think, okay, I need money, so what can I do? I'll wash a car, I'll wash cars, I'll paint houses, I'll sell insurance, I'll just do something, right? We don't think in terms of, well, what's my varna? Even sometimes in Krishna consciousness we don't think, how I could best use my talents. Where would my inspiration come? Where would my talents come? What's my nature? And managers should be thinking that way as far as it's practical. How I can engage a devotee in a way that he's inclined to be engaged. That's best. Then, of course, the idea is, well, you should do anything. Well, as a brahmachari, that's your training, to do anything. That's how you're trained. That's what it means to be a brahmachari. But the leader will see your nature. If you can preach to scientists, it's probably not going to keep you in the kitchen for more than a few weeks. So, all right, you're humble. You wash pots. Okay, you passed the test. Let's go to university and convince the atheistic scientists. You've got a PhD in physics. Let's go for it. Right? Don't you think every devotee has a PhD in physics, who's a good speaker, a good writer, and willing to go out, should be preaching with Bhaktivedanta Institute or something? Yeah. So Prabhupada wanted all the educated scientists to form Bhaktivedanta Institute. So they're good at that. That's what they do. Yes.
One more thing, really, I understood what you said, but my question is, you mentioned this also many times, that so much other things have been filled in by hearing so many lectures, what you should do and what you should not do and things like that. You said to me once that there's one thing that is perfect for Krishna consciousness, that's what everyone wants to do, but we have to figure out what we can do best. So, but then, because we have heard so much other things, that this should be done that way, this should be done this way. So then you're not able to understand how to go about it.
Give me an example, what you've heard.
For example,
that's throwing you off.
For example, one should, I read in Prabhupada's statement, Prabhupada's purport in 7th canto, that even if a man is very poor, he should not try to earn his livelihood. One should simply try to preach Krishna consciousness, and Krishna will provide all facilities. And he's mentioning all grastas and sannyasis, be it grasta, be it sannyasi. So, like this, and
even if one is very poor?
Even if a man is very poor, one should not try to earn his livelihood. And simply
what's the context? Because Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya told, I don't know who he told, he said, you should earn spiritual wealth and material wealth.
Shivanand Singh?
Maybe? I don't know. I forget. And Prabhupada never told his grihastas not to work. They live in the temple, yeah. You live in the temple, yes. But once you have kids, you can't do that anymore. I'd have to see the context. The context may have been that grihastas were going out and opening temples and Krishna was providing. Perhaps.
It's in the chapter Instruction for the Civilized Beings. Something like that.
Yeah, I'd have to see it. But that's not a common instruction. It's not the only instruction.
He repeats, it's not the only instruction, that's true. But something, and Ayendra Prabhu is very, I hear Ayendra Prabhu a lot, so he's very much into perform Harinam Sankirtan, that should be the life. And so, but that cannot be practical.
Well, it's funny because then you perform Harinam Sankirtan and people give you money and then you get criticized. And you shouldn't get money for chanting. But if you're supposed to maintain yourself, if we take this quote, just preach Krishna consciousness and maintain yourself, that means people are giving you money. Otherwise, how would you maintain yourself? So now what do you do?
that's what I'm asking. That's
Yeah, so if you can spread Krishna consciousness and maintain yourself, that's wonderful. If you have that faith and ability, why not? But if you can't starve. You have to do something.
so that's what my question was, because you hear these things and then you try to force yourself, no, this is what I should do. This
But
is
it's
what I
not the
should
only thing you hear. So you have to take everything in consideration. Not just one thing. And that one thing you may not perfectly understand. Working's not a problem. Working for sense gratification, that's the problem. Prabhupada never discouraged working. He discouraged working for sense, just for yourself. So you're going to have to do something. One of my godbrothers was the temple president. He opened up the preaching in Mexico. And many, many devotees came. Then at a certain point, he gave up that service and started a business, and he really wasn't doing much preaching. And he hadn't seen Prabhupada in a few years, and then he went to India and he saw Prabhupada, and he was kind of embarrassed because he was the temple president, so his whole interaction with Prabhupada was all about preaching. And now his interaction, he didn't have one. He's just working. So he said, sorry Prabhupada, I haven't been doing much. I'm doing this. I have this incense business or whatever. And he was very embarrassed and apologetic. And Prabhupada was very kind. He said, we have to do something to earn a living. It was very practical. Not idealistic, but practical. You can be idealistic, that's fine. But you have to be practical also. So what was the main thing? There was a devotee, and he wanted to start, I think it was maybe a business importing precious gems, and he thought he could make millions of dollars. And Prabhupada said, my concern is that in his effort to make millions of dollars, we won't lose him as a devotee. We won't lose his Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada said, making one devotee is worth more than $1 million. So, as we were saying yesterday, the main thing Prabhupada wanted to see is that we were engaged, we were happily engaged and advancing. That's the main thing. Whatever you do, you should be happy, satisfied, and it should be ideally suited for sadhana. So let's say you're a teacher. That would be great if you could teach devotees, right? Either in a school for children or school for adults. That would be ideal. Let's say that opportunity is not there. Then probably for you, just teaching in general would be more grounding for you than selling insurance or starting a business, right? Does that make sense? The problem is we don't have a big enough society that guarantees if you want to teach that you would have a job teaching devotees. But in the ideal world, you would. And we wouldn't even have this discussion. It would just be what's your nature, and ISKCON will employ you and make sure you're taken care of. Right? Does that make sense? So you have, when you talk about varnashram, there's a sense of an ideal society in which you would be trained in a varna and then you would engage in that varna. Now you get trained in a varna, but there's no guarantee you can find a job in that varna, and there's no guarantee you'll find that job within ISKCON. But when we were talking about this topic yesterday, we were talking in terms of service, of serving according to your nature, to get inspired. I'm very inspired to go out on Harinam Sankirtan. Is there anything wrong with that? Only thing wrong with that is if your guru said, no, I need you to be a pujari. Then there's something wrong. And as I said yesterday, you might say, Guru Maharaj, as soon as I touch the deities, they fall over. My hands don't do what my mind tells them to do. I can't. They don't work. I can't do deity worship. Or I'm always late. Krishna programmed my brain, I'm always late. So I'm not the right person for, you could say that. It's just not my nature. I'm too much a Shudra. I'm not the right person for leader. You could say that, you could discuss that. I was just talking to a devotee today. So she had a problem. The problem was, I should be like this, but I'm like this. And because I'm like this, if I don't deal with it, I'm going to go crazy. But I'm really feeling anxiety that I'm not like this. So what should I do?
It's always like this.
So I told her, you're like this, so unless someone can preach you from this to this, you have to deal with this and engage this in Krishna's service. And by doing that, someday you'll come to this. So this was a particular conditioning. And unless that conditioning was employed in Krishna's service, that conditioning, without doing that, feeling guilty that I'm not like this, but feeling a strong desire to be like this, was driving her crazy. She couldn't do her sadhana properly because her mind was disturbed. I know I should be like this, but I'm like this. And as Leela Shakti said, that's everybody's condition. I know I should be like this, but I'm like this. I need this, I have to do this. But really, if I were surrendered, I would do this. If I were really surrendered, say, Guru Maharaj, whatever you want me to do, just tell me. But I really have this nature that if I don't do this, I'm going to go crazy. I know I should just be on the street 12 hours a day distributing books. But I am the most unsocial person God ever created. I would be happy living in a cave for the rest of my life. So probably better I do service in an office. Because when I go out in the street, I just freeze up and I don't talk to anybody and I waste the whole day. Now I feel guilty because I know I should distribute 100 books a day. And I don't distribute any. So what did I tell her? I told her, you have to deal with your nature. You have to resolve it. That's your nature, so you have to deal with it. In a way, you can employ it in Krishna service and make peace with it. What do you think of that? It's okay?
I feel that it cannot be done alone. Finding one's nature and knowing, like, to be like very truthful to oneself is for me it's not so easy. For I feel because I need someone who can help me to break it down, like to see things more clear.
Yeah, that may be that. One way or the other. We may need help. But this nature was a conditioned nature, so it was obvious to her. She just didn't realize how strong that nature was until I pointed it out. And knowing that that nature was so strong, it wasn't going to change, it just had to be employed. And she wasn't going to transcend it. She said, I try to transcend it and I can't. It's just, that's who I am, right? I am a very unsocial person. I hide in caves. When the people come here for Gaur Purnima, you won't see me for 10 days. I can't see all these people. When I have a birthday party, there's 3 people there. My 3 best friends, that's it. I'm not social. You put me out on Sankirtan, I just go to a park and read. I can't do it. I feel bad. I know Prabhupada wants me to distribute books. I know how much Prabhupada is stressed preaching. Okay, but I like to write, and I can preach through writing. I just don't like dealing with people. All I have to deal with is a computer. Me and the computer, it's fine. Me and people, it doesn't work. All right, let's engage you in writing. We have so much to write. Then it works. Then I'm happy. I'm in the office. And my temple president said, this is fine. We need someone to do this job. This is perfect. I encourage it. He's happy. I'm happy. See? That's just, see, the point I was making is, we have ideal, but we are not ideal. So you have to balance who you are with the ideal. And we get caught up in guilt or shame or whatever because we can't fulfill the ideal. And if you just recognize this is my nature, this is how I'm going to be right now, then deal with it. Then you're okay.
Then,
Yes?
so should I switch it?
I think they want the fan, right? You all want the fan, right? Get a noisy recording, but you'll be cooler. I don't know how we're going to hold classes next month. This will be like sweat lodge. Yes, let's speak of May. It's impossible.
Where does this nature come from? Is it from the soul expressing its desire, or it's from the mind?
It's a condition.
It's just created physical perceptions.
Well, that's part of your desire. It's just you're born with it. Past samskaras, past karma, past desires to be a certain way. You don't have to worry about where it came from. It just is. It is what it is. That's the whole point. Conditioning you can change, but your nature is. You may not change your nature, but you can sometimes, let's say, I am very reclusive. I don't like people. But I'm very surrendered and my spiritual master wants me to distribute books. So I say, well, I could do it if I just sit behind the table and people come up. And if people come up, I'm okay. So although it's my nature to be unsocial, I can adapt to that. But it doesn't change my nature, it's just that I adapt to it. Right? I may be very shy, but when I'm out in public telling people about Krishna, it doesn't help to be shy. So then I kind of force myself to be more extroverted, to be more friendly. I never smile. I'm never friendly with people. I don't like people. I don't like talking to people. It makes me feel weird. I just like being alone. But my spiritual master wants me to do this. He doesn't have enough devotees for the festival. He wants someone at this display. So I go to the display and I talk to people and I try to smile. And all day I'm going like this. I'm reminding myself, gotta smile, have to smile. Hi, how are you? So when I do it, and by the end of the day, I say, well, that wasn't so bad. And then I go home and I go in my room and lock the door and don't see anybody because that's my nature. So I can adapt my nature, but it's not going to change. It's still, even though I was friendly, still generally my nature is just to be distant from people. But for the service, I was able to change. Now, conditioning is a little different. Conditioning are things that you may have picked up in this life that are more habitual and that can be reprogrammed, which is different than nature, which is hardwired. Maybe actually you're not shy, but all your interactions with people when you were a kid were painful. And so you don't want to interact with people. You're actually not shy, but you think you're shy, but it's actually all you don't want. You want to avoid painful experiences. And then you realize that, and you overcome it. And then you're not shy anymore. So that's not your nature. That's a response to your past. That's different. But now your next question is, how do I know the difference?
Exactly. What is the difference between samskaras from past lifetimes and conditioning?
Sometimes you don't know.
It's actually it's all in the mind.
Well, not necessarily, because you might have an extroverted nature or an introverted nature, but it might be more pronounced because of certain experiences in the past, like bad experiences with people, or insecurities you have about yourself. Maybe I'll say something and I'll look stupid. And maybe you're not shy, you're just afraid you'll say something stupid, so you don't say anything. Right? So if you recognize those things, and you realize why I'm acting that way. And some part of our nature is obvious. This is just how we are. We're very funny, we're very serious, we're very loud, very quiet. It's always how we are. We're just always like that. Right? And so it becomes obvious that's my nature. Now, if you're introspective and you look at that, you might see, well, maybe something caused that. That's not my nature. That's causing me to be more one way or the other. It's not always easy to know. But if you realize something's your nature, at least you can employ it in Krishna service. And you can not drive yourself crazy because you think, oh, I'm so shy, what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you, that's just how you are. That's a personality trait. Nothing wrong, right? Maybe in a certain service it's not good, but in another service it's good. Or not bad. We go back to this problem. Oh, I'm shy, I should distribute books, I need to be extroverted, bold, and so I'm not, something's wrong with me. Nothing wrong with you, that's just your nature. Okay, it's good if you're bold, it's good if you're extroverted, but maybe you can't be. So you do your best. I've seen some introverted devotees distribute a lot of books. That's possible.
This is something related to distribution. How can we keep targets but still be able to attach to?
That's a different question. It doesn't relate to this class. All I can say is it's easy, and you figure out how it's easy. Read Bhagavad Gita and give you the answer. Fight for the sake of fighting. Do it as a duty. And do it as best you can. And leave the rest to Krishna. I've talked about this principle before of a homogeneous education and a homogeneous culture. And what I've seen, how it's destroying people, and how it actually kind of ignites our false ego, because we think we're supposed to be good at everything and smart as everyone else and so forth. And to acknowledge that we're not can be very difficult. And to acknowledge that you are what you are and it's okay is very liberating. Then you can just engage in Krishna service. You don't have to compete with anybody. Just be happy. When I was in school, in my science class, I was bored stiff. I didn't know what they were talking about, and I didn't care what they were talking about. I honestly didn't care. I just thought it was totally irrelevant, personally. But that's just me. That's how my brain works. And I didn't go home after school every night and cry that I don't understand science. It's just that I didn't care. Absolutely didn't care. At all. I just cared about playing guitar. I'd go home and play guitar and I was happy. Who cares about science? When I went to university, you had to study physics, had to take one semester of physics, one semester of chemistry, and learn all this stuff. I don't even know if it's true anymore, what we learned. Memorize the tables. What do they call those tables? Periodic.
Periodical table.
Yeah, periodic tables. Well, they've probably discovered a few more atoms since I was in school in 1969, right? Then you go to the anthropology class and study all the bones they found, when and how old they are, and I'd sit there and go, and I think, this is absolutely stupid. This is stupid. It's just stupid. that's me. No interest. Right? But philosophy, interest. Psychology, interest. Music, interest. So I never lamented that I wasn't a scientist. It wasn't that culture. That culture didn't pressure you like it does now. In fact, in my generation, if you studied science, like nobody would talk to you. You were just a total nerd, and you had the cooties. We wouldn't get near you. Like, what's wrong with you studying science? Who wants to be friends with you? That was the culture. So that's the idea. Does that make sense? Yeah. So whatever your nature is, whatever you're good at, go for it. Exploit it for Krishna. See, the whole point is, whatever you are, you just do it for Krishna. It doesn't matter what it is. And we're all about it really matters. Well, in a temple, it may matter because we have service for 48 people and we have 12. So it's going to matter what you do, right? Because you're going to have to cook, then you're going to have to clean, then you have to go distribute books, then you're going to have to come back and do an arti. And so are all the other 12 devotees. And if we don't all do it, temple can't run. That's a different situation. That's like fighting a war. But as I said yesterday, most devotees don't live in a temple. And most devotees are basically choosing the service they do. Isn't it? And as I said yesterday, you evolve by your nature into certain services. So if you're an artist, when you dress, you should see pictures of me dressing the deities. They look like poor little fellows. I'm not an artist, so it's like they don't look so opulent. They look like toned down, cash. Mahatma dresses the deity. Looks like they're going to the beach that day. It's really casual. I'm not, like I said, my hands don't do it, my eyes tell them to do it. They're going to go, do this. No, they don't do that. They just like knock crowns off and earrings fall out. So, but that's okay. That's what I do. That's the best I can do. And I don't go home crying at night that I can't put all these beautiful drawings on the deities. I can't. If I tried to draw, it would be like a mess. People would, be upset. And that's okay. But I can do kirtan. So I do kirtan. Let someone else paint the deities. Is that okay? I forgot what the question was. Does anyone remember where we started out?
Yes, Mantri asked a question like how the nature comes from, where the nature comes
The nature, yeah. Yeah, that was the book distribution. The nature. Yeah, just by being with people, you know their nature. Some people are very intense. Everything is serious, isn't it? Only serious. Prabhu, I have to talk to you. It's just really important. Never really important. It's something stupid. It's really important. I have to talk to you. How about tomorrow? No, I have to talk to you right now. It can't wait. You know people like that? Yes? And other people like, Prabhu, ISIS is coming, they're blowing up Mayapur. Yeah, let's just take prasadam first, we'll worry about it later. Some people are like that, like nothing bothers them. That's their nature, isn't it? So you see everyone has a particular nature, that's just how they are. But sometimes we have to modify that so it doesn't destroy us. So we can use that in Krishna's service. And it doesn't work against us. So your nature, your ability, that any conditioning that's getting in the way, you want to purify that. Purify contamination, engage your nature. I think the problem is when devotees say, well, Prabhu, is my nature to be angry, so maybe I should be Kshatriya and kill people. That may be, but the time is not right for that because, you're only living with devotees and you don't want to kill them. And you don't want to kill the guests.
Yeah, it is the manager to be very critical. And at one point I said, okay, you're critical with yourself.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
it helps. It helps.
It can, or
Because
become,
find it's also dangerous because then you see, you see a lot. But it helps.
yeah.
So if you like to be angry, it's because your nature to be angry, then you can be angry. We have enough reasons to be angry with ourselves.
Yeah.
And we are so busy that
Yeah. Or become an editor.
yeah, things like this. Oh, yeah, I'm doing this.
Editors are big fault finders. Anger also, it has a utilization. It can also be utilized in protection. Protecting. Because you need, for protection you need some anger sometimes, or all the time.
See, this is worse in Mahatma. It said, I will engage my this when body came, this service and this when body came, this service, and so on and so on.
Yeah, so then it becomes a good quality. So the point is, let's say you have that nature, and it'll destroy you if you don't engage it in Krishna service. The nature to fault find will destroy you, unless you can find out how to use it, right? Or I can find so many faults, so I look for them so that I can correct them. The temple room's dirty. That's a fault I found. Oh, I can clean it. This needs painting. That's another fault I found. Oh, I have more service. So you can also use your tendency to fault find for increasing your service. Because you'll find so many things that need to be improved. Right? Just like everybody was telling me in some temple she was at, I don't know where. Yeah, in a temple in India. They were serving out everything on styrofoam. So she was really upset. Alright, so what do? Just go out and buy leaf plates. You pick up all the styrofoam and throw it out. So that's how you use your anger. You see a fault, that's how you use your fault finding. You see the fault and then you do something. Right? Does that make sense?
How do you know what your nature is? Or we can say, how do you know that you're not doing according to your nature?
Oh yeah, ask your mother. First question, how do you know your nature? Ask your mother. Actually, these two devotees went to a course, which was to discover your nature, and they asked them a series of questions, maybe 50 or 100 questions. And a lot of the questions were, what did you like to do when you were young? So, ask your mother is another way of asking that question. Like, mother, what did I do when I was young? You took apart things and put them back together. That's what you did. You listened to music all the time. You were always writing poems. You were always designing things. You were always dancing. You were always acting. With all your friends, you were always in charge. If someone else was in charge, you'd run away. You had to be in charge, So, these are things that you can see when you're young. Right? Right? With your friends, somebody was always in charge. Was that you or was it somebody else? We'll do that in the next week's class. We'll talk more about that. But this week, you can just look at your body as a machine. Yantra, Rudrani Mayaya. The body's a machine made of Maya. So as you know, machines have specific functions. They do certain things. Washing machine, clothes dryer, computer, recorder, camera. Every machine has a certain function. Your body is a machine. What does your machine do? So you can meditate this week. What is your machine? What was your machine designed to do? Prabhu was designed to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Aside from that, what was it designed to do? Beyond eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, what was your machine designed to do? Does it draw well? Does it speak well? Does it write well? Does it understand how things work? Does it teach well? Does it serve well? Does it cook well? Does it like to cook? Does it like to clean? Does it like to organize? Does it like to direct? Some people are super organized. You know those people? If you know them, send them over to my house because I need them. So, some people are extremely organized. Right? They have file folders and everything's in the right place and boxes and everything's labeled. That's their nature. Right? Yeah? So, are you like that? Are you good at figuring things out? Should we do this? Should we do that? We have this problem, this and that. We have this many people. We have this much time. Yeah, but you do this, you do that. You go. Some people are just good at figuring out solutions. That's Krishna made them to figure out solutions. So, if you think about it, you'll start to understand what your machine does best. Some people are creative, visual. Kinesthetic. They like they're athletic, they dance, that's what they're good at. We have one Gurukula, Maharaj's Gurukula graduate. He's now in Mexico, so I saw him there last year. In October or September I was there. So I recognized him from Gurukula. He's from Russia. How do you say Russia? Russia? How do you say Russia in Russian?
Russia. Russia.
Russians.
Russia.
Russians.
Russia.
Russia.
Yeah.
Russia.
Correct.
He was from Russia. And I said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to become a boxer, professional boxer. And he said, my parents put me through music school. I studied music professionally, university level. He said, I don't want to do that. I have to box. That's just what I want to do. He's thinking, why would you want to do that? Get beat up and yeah. But people want to box, don't think like that. They think about knocking the other guy out, they don't think, and if they have to get knocked out sometimes, it doesn't bother them. Right? Like most people, if they see two big boxers go in the ring, think, why in the world would you ever want to do this? Because you get your brains knocked out. Right? But if you have that nature, that's what you want to do. And you enjoy it. So he said, this calling is so strong in me, this is what I'm going to do. I have to do it. So if you think about what does your machine do, what's your calling, what pushes you, what do you always think about? What could you do all day? And at the end of the day, you still wouldn't be tired of doing it.
Sometimes you see that people think it's their nature to do something, but really you can see beyond that it's not their nature, and they're doing it as knee-jerk reactions and experiences and insight. It's like an excuse to either avoid coming up to a level where their nature might be really all the time.
Or doing what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, so
Okay, that's a good point.
safe zone rather than falling to their nature.
Well, there's a lot of social pressure and conditioning there, and there's a lot of fear also. that maybe I can't do it, even though I'd like to do it, because I've never done it. That's true. It's interesting, because sometimes we would rather do something and fail than do something we've never done. Isn't it? Like I'm comfortable doing this, even though it doesn't work. So that's a problem that in youth you weren't guided according to your nature. So now you think maybe you can't do it. But if you go back to the concept that if it's your nature, eventually you'll get really good at it. That's the nature of acting according to your nature. And then you'll be more properly situated, happier, more peaceful. I mean, if you actually did a study, I'm sure you would find so many bad qualities come out of people when they're engaged in occupations that are not according to their nature. I mean, Krishna says you become perfect during your work. And you know, the construction workers don't look very perfect to me. Because they don't know how to, not only do we have nature, but then we have, when it is your nature, but you have to know how to engage that nature properly. Like, for example, Shudra. What is a Shudra? We have very few real Shudras in the world. Shudra is dedicated to his boss. That's a Shudra. Did you know that? To his boss, to his company. That's a Shudra. So he doesn't sit there and pretend like he's working when he's doing his email and hide in his office and close the door and do whatever he wants. But if he's real Shudra, then he's dedicated. He'll be very devoted. So maybe sometimes we just need to understand the qualities of that particular varna, and then maybe we can shift it and be happy. That's also a possibility. Does that make sense? Like most of the workforce doesn't want to work, so they do as little as they can. At least in the corporate world. That means they're not good Shudras. The Shudras would not get by with as little as they can. They would be dedicated to service. That's Shudra. Right? And if you have a business and you're going broke all the time, you're probably not a Vaishya. Battery. Hopefully we'll get enough. I hope we could plug it in. Anything else? Most people are Shudras. And most people don't know how to be good Shudras. Most people are Shudras and they don't know how to be good Shudras. Because Brahmins are teachers and priests. Then you have Kshatriyas who will be the leaders. And you have Vaishyas who are doing agriculture and business, and everybody else will be serving them. So most people, so like 95% are Shudra, or 90%. And most of the people serving don't want to serve. So they do as little as possible. That's kind of normal. So the Shudras don't know how to be Shudras. They're not dedicated. Right? Except maybe in Japan. I think they're good Shudras in Japan.
China.
China maybe also. And in India, I don't know if they're good shooters, but they're so attached to money, they'll just work hard no matter what. I don't know if they're really good shooters or not. Maybe they are. But they're ready to make a lot of sacrifice. Okay, anything else? Yes.
How can we ensure that we don't wrongly assign someone's nature, like we might get really excited and oh, you're a nice thing.
Oh, when we're dealing with other people?
Within our minds, or having the judgment placed upon us.
Oh, so there's two things, judging others and others judging you?
Possibility, yeah.
Okay.
Nothing, like who can actually decide?
Maybe some people are very, what's the word? Perceptive. And they just see somebody and they say, have you ever thought about doing this? They're like right away they can tell. Just you ask a question and the way you ask it. Have you ever thought about public speaking? You're like a really great speaker. That question was amazing. Sometimes you can just see that. But if you don't have that ability, maybe you should be careful about when you tell other people, because you might misdirect them. Possible. So I would say, if you're having trouble understanding your own nature, it may be difficult to understand others' nature. You may be confused. So you want to be a little careful, because you don't want to misdirect anybody. But you could ask questions. Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about that? To see if anything resonates.
I don't have any intention of choosing anyone else's nature, but I have had it happen to me before.
Oh, coming from the other side.
Trying to work out my nature, and that's like,
People tell you what your nature is?
oh, like trying to work it out and then judging me accordingly, and not really having the basis to do it. I don't know. I just personally felt like it was a little
Inappropriate?
well, presumptuous, I think. Like, I think the space is there for the movies to be in, but you have to be also careful.
So she's asking, what about people tell you, I think you should do this?
Or even not even you should do this because or they're trying to like
Put you in a box.
Yeah.
Anyway, what to do when they do that?
Yeah, like it depends on who it is, of course. Like it's a problem with someone telling you you're this nature, but how do we know that the person who's telling you?
Knows what they're talking about? You don't. All you can do is consider it. And sometimes you have a nature, but you don't even notice it. For whatever reason. And you're maybe afraid to admit that's your nature. Because you're not a doctor, a lawyer, or an MBA, and you're supposed to be. And you're afraid to admit, my nature is I just want to take care of kids in preschool. That's what I want to do. And I'm not going to make a lot of money or whatever, but you can get help from other people, but you're going to have to decide yourself, or in conjunction with other people. See, the thing is, if you're engaged according to your nature, it just, to me, it's like you know it. It just feels right. It's like this is the right thing. Everything works out. When I do this, I get energy. I just feel like I could do this forever. I'm inspired. I love it. I inspire other people. I'm happy. These are all signs. Yes.
You just say, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? Then your nature would come out.
That's one way. It's possible. Or you would say, yeah, if you didn't need, what would the question that is sometimes asked is, if you didn't need money, what would you do? You had enough money to live, so now what would you do? But if you ask that to devotees, they go, I come to Mayapur and just hang out. So you have to qualify that question. You'd have to say, if you didn't need money, what would you do? What would your job be? What would you like to do? You're not going to get paid for your job, but you could do anything. What would you do? Oh, I'd love to be an actress. I'd love to do a television show. I'd love to have my own radio show. I'd love to design clothes. That's also a way. It's basically saying, if you could do anything, what would you do? So that's, but I kind of like looking at it from a little different perspective, where you, or at least one way of looking at it, where you don't look so much at what you like to do, but you just look at what you do, what your inclinations are, what your body does, how, like, say, when I hear so-and-so give class, it's so intellectually stimulating, I could listen to that class by him all day. So that's like, okay, my body and mind could actually sit and listen to knowledge all day. Someone else says, yeah, the class was good, but like after an hour, my mind just gets confused. It turns off and I start drawing pictures. So it's different. You just see what your body does. And you start to understand something about yourself. Yeah, so no, but you have to ask the question, what would you do as an occupation? What would you produce? What would you create? What would you contribute? It has to be asked more in that term. Otherwise, it's just a big vacation. Yeah, I'd be on my computer. What would you be doing on surfing the internet and buying things? No, that's not the question. What would you be doing? The question is, the way I would ask the question, and I've had asked this question, we have a communist society. Doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get the same house, same paycheck, same medical as anybody. You can be a brain surgeon or a street sweeper. You're going to live in the same place with the same money. What would you do? And you have to do, in a communist country, you have to work or they'll arrest you. So what would you do? You have, they demand you have a job. It doesn't matter what it is. Street sweeper or a brain surgeon, you get the same paycheck. So then what would you do? That's another way of looking at it. Right? Because we're always looking in terms of money, and that's what throws it off. And we think, no, I'd like to be a doctor. Really? You would? Or you like the money that a doctor makes? So then you don't know what you want to be. Right? Yes? No? Okay, this week meditate on living in a communist country and you have to do something. You're living in a communist country and you have to have an employment. So, and they let you choose the employment. So what would you choose? Librarian? No, don't worry about your qualification. They'll train you. Whatever you want to do, you'll get educated. So, what do you want to be? A librarian, a doctor, an actress, a writer, a news anchor, a yoga teacher, a musician, what's going to be your occupation? Start to connect with what you are. And if you meditate on it, and then you meditate on how I can employ that nature in Christian service, and you start to get some insight. And then the thing is, when you think about it, it should inspire you. I don't know if any of you had this experience. If you're not really a Sankirtan devotee, and then they say that it's time to go out in Sankirtan, you start yawning. Anyone had that experience? Time for Sankara. You actually get tired. Anyone have that experience? No? Yes? Maybe? So if it's not, something's not your nature, it doesn't inspire you, when you talk about it, it makes you tired. But if you're a book distributor and you really like it, and take time for Sankirtan, and that gives you energy. Right? So that's also how you know your nature. Just by thinking about it, you get energy. And if it's not your nature, by thinking about it, you get tired. Yes?
So sometimes you're good at something, because when you're good at it, so it's not something that you should like.
Yeah.
It could be your nature to do it, but you don't like it.
Then it's probably better not to do it. Because in the Gita, Krishna says, he doesn't say do what you like, he says do what's your nature. You know, that's just who you are, that's what you're meant to do.
Yeah, but that's not saying you're good in it, but you don't
But
even like it.
good doesn't necessarily mean it's your nature. Just like sometimes a Brahmin could be a good Kshatriya, or Kshatriya could be a good Brahmin, but it's not their nature, so they shouldn't do it. I mean, that's what Krishna says in the Gita. Even though you can do something better than somebody else, don't do it if it's not your varna, it's not your nature. That's interesting, isn't it? But as I was saying yesterday, as a general statement, Prabhupada said everyone should be engaged in doing something that inspires them. The main thing is to be engaged, because it's that service that will purify you. So if you're engaged in a service that inspires you, you're going to be inspired. It's just the way it is. That's important. You know, you can say, okay, it's not pure devotional service because I'm thinking what inspires me, then I'm serving Krishna. But that will purify you. And as I said yesterday, you're going to do it anyway because it's your nature. You can't avoid it. On YouTube, they have all kinds of cooking shows. All these people cooking this, cooking that, cooking competitions, everything. Some people, their occupation is to cook. They love to cook. That's what they do. They cook every day of their life. I cook once a year on my wife's birthday. Other than that, I don't cook. If it's a choice of eating or cooking, I just won't eat. I don't like cooking. I don't know why, but it's just cooking doesn't excite me. And Korma likes to cook. Yeah. So if I'm going to be the head cook, it's just going to be a burden. Right? Does that make sense? Okay? Very good. Good enough for now. You can meditate the next week on what your machine does, how you can engage that in Krishna service. Now we can discuss next week. Yes? You know this thing, midlife crisis, where people like at the age of 45 or 50 realize that they've been in the wrong occupation their whole life? Sometimes they go back to college to get educated into the occupation that they really want to do. So, before you have a midlife crisis, just figure it out now. Right? All right? It's too late now for you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gopremanandi Hari Hari Bol.